Welcome everyone to the 2026 Camera Buyer's Guide. My name is John Greengo. In this guide, I'm going to be giving you a bunch of helpful buying advice if you are in the market for a new camera. Perhaps you're brand new to photography and the photography world seems a little confusing. In here, I'm going to be giving you some step-by-step guides as instructions as to what features to look for and what's really important in getting a new camera. If you are just looking at upgrading or it's been a long time and it's really time for your old camera to get replaced, well, if you want to refresh some of the basics, you can do that in here, but I also will have a lot of different recommendations for different types of photographers. Now, the way I do my buyer's guide is I start off for the people who are new to photography and I kind of go through some camera fundamentals, explaining what's on the market, what to look for, different aspects of different types of cameras that are available. In the second half of this guide, I will have my actual recommendations, and this is for the different brands, the different lens systems, and for the cameras in particular. There's a lot of different options available for a lot of different people, and so we try to cover a lot of different bases in here. Now, part of this guide is this downloadable PDF, and in here is a lot of the information that I have in the class, and so if you like it in written form, it's also in here, and so there's a lot of technical information about what different features do on different cameras. And then of course, as you get towards the back, there's more in the recommendations. And so this is something that you can print off or you can view on screen, but it was also very helpful, I think, if you are looking at getting a new camera. This is kind of the new guide of what to look for. Now, just in case you're wondering, why am I doing this for free? One, because I'm a really nice guy. But I also know that people are looking for honest, unbiased information about what camera is best for them. Now, a long time ago, I used to work in a camera shop, so I'm very used to working with people that try to find the right match of camera for them. But now I am fully independent. I do not work for any of the manufacturers. I don't work for any companies that sell cameras. And so it makes no difference to me what camera, what model you buy, where you buy it, if you buy it or don't buy it. I'm not a part of that at all. I'm just here to give you quality information. Now, part of the reason that I do this is because I do have a lot of people who ask me questions about what camera should I get for X. And it's difficult to send emails to all these people, so it's easier just to record one video that's got all of my thoughts about new cameras in here. And I get a lot of these questions because I do teach classes in photography and on cameras in particular. I have a lot of classes on a lot of different brands and a lot of different models. And so I get to know a lot of cameras more closely than just about anyone you will ever meet in your life, because I do use all of these cameras and really get to know them. And these courses that I have in-depth information about exposure, focus, setting your camera up, customizing it for yourself, going through the entire menu system, general photography with it as well. And so I really get a good feel for what these cameras are good for and who's really going to appreciate them and be most interested in them. And so I've taken all of that information and turned that into my camera recommendations. And so we'll be looking at the end of the second part of this guide for the best cameras for these different categories. And generally, I'm hoping that you can find at least one category that is pretty close to what you are doing with your cameras and your photography. And so we'll cover those cameras at the end of this guide. As I was putting this guide together for this year, one of the trends that I noticed is that generally prices are a little bit up, not across the board, but with kind of a camera that is a current model from last year to this year, it's gone up $100, $200, $300. Now that might be because of inflation. It could be because of tariffs. I'm not really sure, but generally prices are up a little bit on current models. Now, as cameras get a little bit older, the standard goes that they get discounted, they get rebates put on them, there are incentives to buy them. And so as a camera gets to be 3 and 4 years old, it will start selling for less money, and that really hasn't changed. It's just that the new models have gone up a little bit. Another trend that's been going on for a long time, but just something I want to note here, is that there are more and better video features in the camera. Now, the cameras that we're going to be talking about in this guide are focused towards still photography, but virtually all of them can shoot video as well. And just the number of video features, the quality of video that you can get from it is getting better and better all the time. A third trend that's been going on for a few years is subject tracking. This is the ability of the camera to identify a particular subject, like a person, a dog, a cat, horse, and be able to track it moving around in the frame. And this is great for sports and action photography. And so there are just more and more cameras that are getting better at that type of work out there. Now, making a smart buying decision starts with asking some questions about yourself and how you're going to be using the camera. And the first thing is do you know what you're going to be photographing? If so, that's going to kind of steer the direction of what features it's going to have and what to look for in a particular camera. Now, the more you know about the features, which we'll talk more about in this first section, the more you know about those, the more you will know about which cameras to get, because either they have it or they have better quality versions of those features. Now, if you have an existing camera system right now, probably makes sense just to get a new camera that fits that particular system. Now, if you have an older system, well, you might want to think about upgrading to a new system. Depending on what's going on with that system, is it still supporting you and your needs as a photographer? There's a lot of options when it comes to different lens systems. So you have different groups of lenses and cameras that you can choose from. It's a very, very first important question to ask and decision to be made, and we'll be talking about it throughout this course. And finally, your budget. That is going to depend a little bit on what you can get into. Base level, advanced level, which brands. In general, I admit, photography is generally kind of expensive. I realize that. But some camera systems just have more available, affordable options to many different people. And so it's something to be aware of, not only your current budget, but what's it going to take to get the full system that you want down the road. Something else to keep in mind is how you are going to use the camera in the terms of automatic or manual control. Now, pretty much all the cameras that we're going to talk about here have the option of being controlled fully manually or fully automatically. So they're all pretty equal in that regard. But how easy they are to work in a manual versus automatic mode, well, that varies a little bit. Some of the larger cameras have more room for different buttons, and just they're easier to work with in the hands, and that just ends up being a bigger, maybe more expensive camera. And so think about how you want to use the camera and how much control you want to have, because that's going to influence you in what type of cameras you're going to be getting along the way. In this first section called Camera Fundamentals, I want to cover just some of the most important basic information about the way interchangeable lens cameras are today and some important decisions that you want to make as you decide which camera is best for you. In here, I want to talk about the different camera types, some of the different features that you're going to find, and kind of some of the standards that you're going to see along the way when you're comparing one camera against another camera so that you can really see which one is right for you. First up, let's talk about camera types. There are a few different camera types. We're going to be mostly concentrating on one of them, but there are many to talk about. First up are fixed lens cameras. And we can throw our mobile devices into this category, which are incredibly convenient devices, and they have been getting better and better at taking pictures. Now, they're still not as good as regular cameras, but they are very handy and they make up for a lot of that in that category. Now, the point and shoot category of cameras, which are dedicated cameras, but they have lenses that are affixed to the camera, so it's just one unit. You don't need to buy really anything extra. You, of course, need memory cards and batteries and potentially filters, but the camera and lens is done and it's all right there. These are usually relatively small in size, but they have diminished quite a bit because mobile devices and phones and so forth have been getting better and better, and more people are relying on them rather than going to point and shoot cameras. But if you do want to upgrade the quality of your image, as well as I think the experience of shooting photography, a point and shoot camera can be a good way to go. Now, with an interchangeable lens system, you really expand the options of what you can do. You can put on wide angle and close up and telephoto lenses. There's lots of options, and that's where photography gets very fun, in my opinion. Now, DSLRs were the standard in the industry for a very long time, and now they are starting to fade out. And so there's a lot of people who still have them, and they're certainly capable of professional, excellent quality photography, but they are no longer introducing new lenses and new cameras. And so it's kind of a dying system at this time. And so if you use a DSLR system, There's nothing wrong with it. You can take fantastic photos just as good as anyone else. But when your camera has a problem or it gets dropped or something like that, and you need to replace it, there aren't new models coming out, and you're going to have to be choosing from older models and older technology. Where the industry has really gone is to mirrorless interchangeable lens cameras. And here, that's predominantly what you see up here. This is what is available today when you want to get into a camera system that is very versatile and has the latest technology. And this is where you're going to get the best features, the best options, and it is a bit more money than everything else just because it is the latest and the greatest of what is out there. But it is the standard in photography these days. One of the most important aspects of any camera is the sensor size. Generally speaking, the larger the size of the sensor, the more light it's going to gather, and the more light it gathers, generally, the better picture you're going to have. Now, there's a lot of different options out there, and yet we still refer back to the good old days of 35 millimeter film, which was a very popular standard at one time. And that's just what a lot of photographers settled on as being a good size for them. Now, there are sizes that are larger and sizes that are smaller. And that was both back then during the days of film as well as today. And so we find a lot of cameras that are full frame cameras, which means they use a image area that is the full frame of a 35 millimeter piece of film. Now, a lot of manufacturers have made cameras that use slightly smaller sensors, and this allows them to make smaller cameras, smaller lenses, as well as more affordable equipment. And so this is a really good option for a lot of different people because full frame, I'm going to be honest with you, is really overkill for a lot of people and their own personal needs. And so there are a variety of other smaller sizes like 4/3, which is extremely portable and can be very good for adventure photography or bird photography because telephoto lenses become much easier to make with a smaller size sensor. Some of the point and shoots use even smaller size sensors, and so that allows them to make smaller, more affordable cameras. If you want to go larger, you can. There's not too much more to go, but you can go into an area called medium format, which uses an extra large sensor to achieve even higher quality. And this is popular with certain professional and commercial photographers. Now, if you have a phone and you wonder how big is the sensor on your phone, well, you're going to have to look it up online. But I did a bunch of research on the Apple iPhones because I know those have been fairly popular. So I'm just going to use that one standard. And you can see how the sensor size has gotten larger over the years because they've been trying to improve their image quality with their phones. And they know that better lenses are part of it. Some better sensor technology is good, better software is good, but having a larger size sensor is one of the easiest ways to improve the image quality of the pictures that you are taking. And so at least from a technical level, you want good picture quality, get a larger size sensor. So when it comes to interchangeable lens cameras, this is going to be the grouping that we're looking at. Most of the options that you're going to see, the sweet spot, you might say, in photography is the full frame system. This is where you're going to have the most available cameras and the most available lenses. They may not be the easily affordable prices, but it's where a lot of photographers find themselves these days. There are still some fantastic options with slightly smaller size sensors. Now, a lot of manufacturers have gone with a 1.5 crop factor, so it's smaller by a factor of 1.5. Canon's at 1.6, they're basically the same. And so there's a lot of options for people who have a little bit of a budgetary concern or a size and weight concern. You can get a little bit smaller size equipment. Another favorite of mine is the 4/3 system, and this is used and shared by Panasonic and OM System. And so there are bodies and lenses that you can share back and forth, which is kind of a rare thing. We don't see that too much in the camera world. They're very proprietary about their lens mounts and their selections of lenses. If you want to go larger to medium format, well, there's a couple of great companies, Fujifilm and Hasselblad, that make some tremendous products in there, and they're wonderful. They're going to be quite a bit more money. And so that is kind of the basics of those sensors. Now, in general, as I said, the bigger the sensor, generally, the more light it is going to let in more light, and that generally means you're going to get better image quality. You can either have more pixels, you can have bigger pixels, greater dynamic range. You also can get shallower depth of field because of the type of lenses that will work with it. A smaller sensor is good for reducing the size of the camera a little bit. Camera size doesn't change that much. It's the lens size that really changes a lot. It's also good if you would like to reduce the weight or spend a little bit less money. They tend to be a little bit more affordable. Now, three of the most common sizes that you're going to see is the full frame, roughly the 1.5 or 1.6 crop, and the 4/3 system. And if you're a working professional, chances are you're probably going to want a full frame camera. That's just kind of the best equipment out there. It gives you the most options in cameras and lenses. And when it comes to shooting in low light, the top level ISO that is probably going to be good for you shooting is around 12,800, which means you're going to be able to work in a dark church or concert theater or living room, and you're going to be able to get nice sharp photos in very, very dark environments. The 1.5 crop, which I think is a very good spot for a lot of different people, will have a top ISO of around 6,400 that I think looks good. Now, this is a subjective call on mine as to what looks good. Everybody will have their own slight differences there, but this tends to be really good for people who are hobbyists in photography. Perhaps a weekend birder or somebody doing travel photography. That crop size sensor just makes the size of the equipment a little bit more reasonable. And in some cases, it's nice to go even a little bit smaller just because you get a little bit more reach with your telephoto lenses. It will restrict you on some low light capabilities a bit. Kind of depends on where and how you use your cameras as to how important that low light ability is. Now, along with the sensor size, the pixel count is fairly important in a camera. The pixels, the picture element, is what records the light on the sensor. A very common sensor these days will have 6,000 columns across and 4,000 rows. 6,000 times 4,000 puts you at 24 million pixels, and that's where we get 24 megapixels. And so this was a big thing in the early days of digital. We wanted to have more and more resolution because we were trying to equal the quality of film. Well, we easily surpassed the quality of film, and we kept going from there. I was looking back over the last 25 years of digital photography, and I wanted to see what was the pixel count of sensors over the years. And if we look at the cutting edge cameras, it ramped up very quickly in the early days of digital, and it's kind of leveled off over the last several years. Now, if we just take it back a step and look at the more mainstream cameras that were coming out, and I'm kind of averaging a number of different cameras, it's very much remained unchanged for, well, maybe more than the last decade or so. And so I think we're at a level at this point in time where megapixels don't matter that much. They matter a little bit because they help in the quality of the resolution that you're getting, but it's not the big difference between a good photograph and a great photograph. It just means that you can enlarge it a little bit more, you can crop in a little bit more. And so most people getting cameras these days are going to end up with a 20 to 24 megapixel camera. There's some higher end cameras that work around 50 to 60 megapixels. And if you know you're going to need that extra resolution, yeah, it's nice to have, but you kind of need to have the quality lenses and everything else to go along with it. But for most people, even if you're a professional photographer, you can make a good living with a 20 megapixel camera. Now, if you're not too familiar with, how many pixels do you need for different areas? Well, the first generation of digital cameras had around 3 megapixels, and it was good enough for snapshots. Now, I always calculated film to be about 10 megapixels in quality. There's a lot of variables in there, so I know that number is a little flexible in there. I think most professional photographers can make a great living, 20, 24 megapixels. There are a number of cameras that have a bit more at 32 or 45 or up to 60 megapixels. And if you want to go up to medium format, well, then you can get yourself all the way up to 100 megapixels, which very few people need, but a lot of people like to have and want, just because more resolution gives you more detail. Now, there is a balance between having less and more. Now, more means you have more resolution, you can make bigger enlargements, you can crop images in a little bit further. I've always had the mindset that I don't mind cropping, but I don't like to crop very much out of an image. And so I would prefer to frame it up and shoot it as I want it. Now, less pixels means that you can shoot more quickly. So some of the best sports photography cameras that I'm going to recommend later on in this guide actually shoot only 24 megapixels because that is more than enough for professional sports photographers in their needs for what they're doing, but that allows them to shoot through more data, more photos, more quickly. They're not going to use as much storage. It's easier to transfer. It's just easier to work with for people that have a high volume workflow of a lot of images that you're shooting. And so also think about how many pictures you're going to shoot. If you're going to shoot wildlife photography, yes, it's great to have a lot of resolution, but if you're going to be shooting a ton of photos, you need to be dealing with a ton of data. Let's think about the size and layout of the camera. Now, there's a lot of different camera sizes out on the market today. You can see some of them here. You can see some cameras are just much bigger cameras than other cameras that are much smaller in size. What's the difference in that? Well, all of these cameras are going to have buttons on the outside that give you quick access to some of the most important features. They're also going to have menus, which dive into lengthy menus, and they also have shortcut menus, allowing you to get to some of the most needed features very, very quickly. When you have a small camera, you need to go into this menu shortcut button more frequently because the camera doesn't have as many buttons and dials and ways of controlling things directly. You need to be doing it with these kind of soft controls that control a multitude of different features. And so a small camera is really nice for travel photography or backpacking or something like that, but you might spend a little bit more time setting your camera up and adjusting features. And so that's the trade-off between a smaller size and a larger size. Now, there are many different brands, which all make very good cameras, and they have different lens systems within these different brands. So many of these manufacturers offer multiple options as far as the types of lenses that you can work with in there. And there are a lot of different options available. I'm actually just listing the most popular ones on the market. There are others out there, and we're not going to get into everything on the market. I'm trying to really concentrate on the top 80%, you might say, or 90% of what is available out there. Now, with each of these different lens mounts that they offer, there is going to be either some compatibility or incompatibility with other systems with other brands. Now, the only real compatibility that we have is Panasonic. They have a system that shares a lens mount with OM system, and they have a system that shares a lens mount with Leica, or at least one of the Leica systems out there. And so you can't share lenses between different brands, generally speaking. Sometimes there's adapters that you can use. That's kind of a whole different category. But if you want to get a camera with the name brand lens on it, you need to stay in that particular family, you might say. Something else to consider in a still camera is the video focus of that camera. There are some cameras that will only shoot stills and they will not shoot video at all. These are kind of rare cameras, and they're not cheaper because they don't have video in them. They're just kind of more specialized still cameras. Most of the cameras we're going to be talking about in this guide here are cameras that are designed for shooting stills, and they're also pretty good at shooting video. And what they've done here is that they have made, as far as I can tell, no compromises to the camera for the still photographer. They've just included video features so that if you want to shoot video, yes, you can do it. It's not the best video camera in the world. If you want a true video camera, there are other cameras that are more focused on video. Now, this line in the sand between stills and video has been getting blurrier and blurrier. And so next up, we have stills camera, but they have a kind of a video focus to them. And so they're trying to be a little bit easier to work with for somebody who's shooting video. Sometimes it's just bloggers. Sometimes it's people shooting commercial cinema. It can really vary depending on exactly how focused you want to get. We have stills camera with a heavy video focus. And these are cameras that we are generally not going to be talking about in this course here. If a camera is designed for shooting video, we're not going to be covering it in here in any depth at all. We also have cameras that are available that share the platform of these stills cameras, but they are really dedicated video cameras that either are very difficult to shoot still photos with, or they're impossible altogether to shoot stills with. And so this is something we're definitely not going to be talking about. And if you are interested in fully getting into video, there are cameras that are video focused only, and you can't shoot stills at all in them in any particular way. And this line is just becoming blurrier and blurrier between stills and video. And if you're new to this world, there is a big difference between shooting stills and shooting video. What happens with the camera, what it needs, the types of features, the design of the camera is very different. One thing just to think about here, when you're shooting video, you're shooting lots of pictures very quickly, and that's a lot of data. And so what happens is the sensor and some of the components in the camera get very hot. And so a dedicated video camera will have some sort of venting system. It'll either have a passive venting system where it's just got kind of holes to allow air in to cool off the components, or it might have an actual fan that's running to cool those components off. And that is completely unnecessary in a still camera. It makes it bigger, it uses the battery more, it just doesn't help out in still photography and is not necessary. And so that's one of many differences between a still camera and a video camera. The way that you change the settings can also be a little bit different. And in general, the stills cameras have tried to bend a little bit towards the video world without compromising the still world. And I think they've done a very good job of that, because there's a lot of new features in cameras that I appreciate that have come to us from the video world. All right, next up, let's talk about the exposure features that you're going to find in these cameras. Now, many of the cameras are going to feature a mode dial. This has been kind of our standard way of controlling how the shutter speeds and apertures are controlled on cameras for the last several decades. Now, some cameras use a mode button. It ends up doing the exact same thing. You end up having a few more options available, and it can be done with a little bit smaller size. And so there's some more advanced cameras that have a button rather than a dial that has some graphics on it. Some cameras in the lower end to middle range will have a fully automatic mode, which will take care of shutter speeds, apertures, but then it also jumps in, takes care of ISO, focusing, white balance, and a whole bunch of other features. Some cameras will offer scene features with little graphic icons, and they're going to tweak the camera a little bit more in the direction of that style of shooting. There is nothing these scene modes are doing that you can't do on your own with knowledge, and so they can be handy for beginners to get the camera set up for a particular style of shooting. Photography starts getting fun when you start having some manual control. Now, the program mode is still an automated mode where it sets shutter speeds and apertures for you, but it allows you to go into the entire rest of the menu system. It allows you to change the focusing system however you want. And so for photographers who've got a bit of knowledge but want a bit of help, that program mode is nice. Shutter priority allows you to specifically set the shutter and the camera will take care of the rest. Aperture priority is kind of the opposite, where you get to set the aperture and the camera takes care of the rest. And so they're semi-automated modes, which can be handy in many situations. And for the serious photographer, if you want to set everything yourself, you can put the camera in the manual mode. Now, what this generally means is you're setting shutter speeds and apertures yourself. Now, everything else is also going to be on your own, but you have specific control of those two features. Many cameras will also feature either user or custom modes where you get to preset the camera how you like it set up. Let's just say you do a particular type of photography, you shoot bicycle racing, and you do that quite frequently, and there's a lot of adjustments to your camera when you do bicycle racing. Well, you could set your camera up for bicycle racing and then have it memorized into C1, C2, or C3, and then when you turn the dial to that mode, all of your favorite settings are there. It's like having a favorite recipe with all the right components in there to make it just the way that you want it. And so this is pretty common on a lot of different cameras. There's a lot of standard features that you're going to find on cameras. Exposure compensation allows you to make the picture a little lighter or a little darker. Most cameras will have different metering systems that you can use depending on how you like to read the light coming into the camera. Auto bracketing is very much like exposure compensation, but this is where the camera will automatically go in and shoot a variety of exposures, and this can be handy in tricky lighting situations. All cameras will feature a histogram, which is a little graph to show you whether your picture is too light or too dark, and this can be very helpful when you are manually setting the exposure on your camera. Some cameras will feature highlight alerts, which is a feature that you can turn on that will show you the pixels that are getting overexposed, and it will just help be a guide for you for making sure that you're getting the correct exposure. Some cameras will feature something that's called high dynamic range, and this is where the camera shoots multiple photos. It changes the exposure with those photos and then combines them to create one image that contains the best information from each individual image. It sounds very good. The problem is it takes 3 photos, so you can't shoot anything that is moving. And sometimes the results of doing this in camera and the in-camera processing don't end up with the most natural results. It can work in some situations, but it's a little bit more hit and miss. And this is something that is done better, in my opinion, in post-production. So take 3 different exposures, download them, and then work with software on your computer. You generally will have more control of it in that particular situation. Next up, let's talk about the focus features of the camera. First up, pretty much all the cameras are going to have manual focus options and autofocus options. The cameras are very good at autofocus, and it's great to use most of the time, but sometimes it's nice to take manual control. In order to do that, sometimes you'll have switches on the body, sometimes they're dials. Usually there's a switch on the lens that will indicate manual focus or autofocus, but sometimes in order to save space or money on the lens, they take the switch off and you have to go into the menu system on the camera to switch back and forth between the available modes. Doesn't really matter how you do it. They're all kind of handy, but if you do want to make that change a lot, it's nice to have a quick control on the outside of the camera. If you are somebody who is likely to want to go in and manually focus, something to keep in mind when you are looking at lenses is, what is that manual focus ring like? Is it large and smooth turning, or is it really small and has a plasticky feel to it? If you do a lot of focusing, it's nice to have a nice rubberized grip that's large in size. Pretty much all cameras have a system where when you press down on the shutter release halfway, it activates the focusing system so that you can focus before you shoot a photo. If you don't like this, virtually all cameras have ways of customizing the buttons on the camera so that you can control this in a different manner. Now, the standard focusing modes that you're going to see out there, not too many. Most people use a single focusing for most photography. This is where you're focusing on a stationary subject. The camera focuses on it, locks in on it, and you're good to go for taking a photo. If you're doing action photography, continuous focusing will allow you to track a subject that's moving closer to you or further away from you. This is what you want to use in action and sports photography. Some cameras feature an automated option for switching back and forth between single and continuous. I find this a little unreliable, and you don't really see what the camera is going to do at any one time, and so I generally don't recommend it in my classes. And then, of course, you have manual focus if you want to take control of focusing the lens yourself and you want to set it to a very particular setting. So that's something that's pretty common on all cameras. Focus area is where in the frame you are going to focus. A small single box will allow you to be very precise. Having a AF control joystick on the back of the camera or controller will allow you to move it across the frame to wherever you want it in the frame. When you're shooting action, it's handy to have a little bit larger focusing group or larger box, and that's going to be handy to have. And if you want, you can activate all the focusing points, which isn't good for a lot of photography because it always focuses on the foreground subject, and that may not be where you want it to go, but it can be handy in some very erratic situations like birds in flight. Subject tracking, as I mentioned at the beginning of this guide, is something that is becoming very common. Virtually all the cameras that can do autofocus can handle tracking humans, faces, eyes. They can even pick left eye or right eye if you want to get really specific about it. There's also other animals that they'll be able to track, and this varies a little bit from one camera to the next. They can also track different vehicles, and this is a very good system for following the movement of a fast-moving subject. Now, there's a number of times when this gets to be a little bit tricky and it doesn't always work so well, usually when there are a number of them, animals or vehicles or people in the frame, because it needs to have some input from you as to which one it wants to focus on. So this is an area that cameras have really gotten very good at. It's made sports and action photography much more attainable and much higher quality results, much more consistent results when you are using this in the right scenario, when it's set up properly on your camera. There are other focus tools that are quite common. A focus peaking option comes to us from the world of video, and it shows you the zone that is in focus. And so what it does is it highlights that area with these shimmering colors, and you can see where the camera is focusing. And this can be really handy in some situations. Other cameras will offer a focus guide for manual focusing, and this is an assist to let you know where you are focusing and how accurate it is. And so this varies quite a bit from one camera to the next, but I find them very handy to use. Focus bracketing is another very popular feature, and this is where the camera will shoot through a series of photos at different focusing distances, resulting in a series of photos that you then need to use post-production software, so outside of the camera on your computer, to combine the sharp areas of all of them. And you can achieve an image that is sharp from the foreground to the background with a greater level of sharpness and detail than you could take with a single image. And so this is a great feature, and it's on more and more cameras. It's almost all of them at this point. All right, capture controls is different features that control how the camera captures the information. Now, this used to be called the drive control back in the days when we had film, and it was how fast the film was driven through the camera, but now it actually controls much more. Most basic photography is done with a single shot mode, one shot at a time, but there are continuous modes. Sometimes they'll separate them into a continuous low and a continuous high mode so that you can have a separate low setting for lower action and then a higher setting for higher speed action. And they often have one that's got a little plus by it. And what this means is it's like the high speed one, but they might be compromising some of their features on the camera. They can't do it without some other shortcut. And so be prepared for some other feature being sacrificed when you go into that high speed mode. But they can be very good in very, very fast moving situations. And then all cameras will have a self timer so that you can get in the shot, or you can use your camera on a tripod to reduce the vibration so that you can use a 2-second delay, let the vibration settle out, and then the camera takes a photo. That's pretty common on all cameras. Now, the way that the sensor captures light is changing quite a bit these days. Most cameras still feature a mechanical shutter, which is mechanical blades that open and close. They cause a little bit of vibration in the camera, but it's the way cameras have worked for many, many years. And that's the way most of the cameras work out on the market. Most of the cameras will offer the option of using the camera with an electronic first curtain shutter. Now, there are some cameras that only have one shutter in it, and this is the way that they work all the time. And there are certain restrictions where this may or may not work so well, but it does reduce the vibration because there is no shutter opening right when you are capturing an exposure. But it is a way that some cameras work as a default system and is perfectly fine. So you need to know more about your camera as to what the best shutter option is on your camera. Some cameras are now offering an electronic shutter, and this is where the camera electronically scans the image on to the sensor. And this can be really nice because we don't need shutter units. We don't need moving parts in the camera. It's very, very quiet. But the scanning part may not work so well with subjects that are moving really quick. Now, the next and final stage of shutter is a global shutter. And this is where the shutter turns on and turns off all at the exact same time. Now, this is possible in a very, very small number of cameras available on the market today, but is something that we're going to see more of. Now, being able to do this is very difficult, which means it's expensive and there's some trade-offs in how that camera does it and the quality of the image that you get. And so just be aware that that's a kind of an extreme scenario right now, but that's kind of the direction that photography is going. Some other options that you might see is panorama ability. I know a lot of phones have this. Some cameras have it, not a lot, but some do. And this is an imperfect way of getting a very good panorama. The problem with this system is that the camera is using multiple photos, and when it stitches all those photos together, it sometimes doesn't do it seamlessly. And you can notice some artifacts in unusual areas where maybe somebody was walking throughout the frame and their head was captured twice, and now this person has two heads. And so it's not always the best way of doing things. If you wanted to do a professional panorama, you would shoot a number of individual images and you would use post-production software, which is much more powerful than the software that is built into your phone or to your camera. Some cameras allow you to be very creative and shoot multiple exposures so that you can get some very interesting results, and that can be a lot of fun. If you want to create videos using time-lapse photography, shooting individual photos, perhaps spaced apart by a second or 5 seconds or 10 seconds, you can create some nice videos with this. Sometimes you can create those videos in camera. Sometimes you need to take all of those individual images into post-production software and create the video there. One of the more common features now is something called a pre-shot buffer. Now, this actually changes names from camera to camera. And what this does is it allows you to take pictures before you press the shutter release. What you do is you press halfway down on the shutter release to focus on many cameras. And what this does is it starts recording images and saving them to the buffer in the camera. When you press all the way down on the shutter release, when you see something exciting happen, it goes back in time, maybe a half second, maybe a full second or more, and it takes all of those images that are in the buffer and stores them on the memory card. This can be really helpful for subjects that are very unpredictable in nature. Another very advanced feature is the pixel shift option. And this is where the sensor of the camera will move 1 pixel across and 1 pixel down and all around to collect better color information and better detail information. If you have a subject that is not moving, a still life subject, maybe architecture, photography, and your camera's on a tripod, this is a usable feature to get you a better quality image. Now, this is a little bit challenging to shoot, and I find that this is not very practical for a lot of people's photography, but in certain scenarios, it allows you to take whatever megapixels you have and get an image that is of a much, much higher resolution. And so that can be handy for some people in some very special scenarios. One of the most important features that I think is not given enough attention on cameras is the viewfinder. So in here, let's take a look at the viewfinder and the monitor features on the back of the camera. So I think most good still cameras are going to have an electronic viewfinder. This allows you to look at the image magnified with one eye in bright sunlight and clearly see what you're shooting. The LCD monitor on the back of the camera, I think is great. I love using that for checking composition, working with the menu system. It's just not as great for lining up your subject and shooting photos. Partially because it's a little bit washed out by the bright light around you, if you do have bright light around you, but also for the magnification factor. You just can't see it as closely and as magnified as you can something in the electronic viewfinder. Now, in the electronic viewfinder are a wide variety of different monitors that you're looking at. You are looking at a very tiny TV screen, if you will. We're going to just take Sony as an example. They make a wide variety of products, and they have a wide variety of monitors that they use in their EVF. And so from one of their lowest end cameras to one of their highest end cameras, the number of dots is very important for how sharp a resolution you're going to see. Also important is the size of that screen that you're looking at. And the larger cameras will have larger screens, which make them easier to see. They can also magnify these screens so that they are even easier to see. And there gets to be a large difference once you get to this point comparing these two viewfinders. The refresh rate will be important if you are moving the camera around or you have subjects moving back and forth. It's going to look a little bit more lifelike when you have faster frames per second that are displayed to you because you're going to be able to see the action of your subject more clearly. Now, both of them are going to have full coverage. So they're going to give you the full information about what you are recording in your final image. The eye point is how far back behind the viewfinder can your eye get. A higher eye point is going to allow somebody with glasses or goggles or any sort of reason they want to view what's going on in the viewfinder from a little bit further back. It just makes it easier to view through that finder. All of them have options, or at least most all cameras, both of these cameras, have options for controlling the diopter. So if you wear glasses, you can adjust the viewfinder for your eyes so it's nice and sharp for you to see. And pretty much all cameras are going to have an eye sensor, which will indicate when you put the camera up to your eye, it'll turn on the EVF. And when you take it away from your face or your eye, it'll turn on the monitor on the back of the camera. And there's usually separate controls where you can turn those on and off manually, force one on, or you can use the camera in an automated mode, which is what works well for most people in most situations. Now, when you're talking about the resolution of the EVF, be aware that there is some deception going on by all of the manufacturers. They're going to list the number of dots that are in their viewfinder. And dots and pixels are a little different because they say that 3 dots make up 1 pixel. So the actual resolution is 1/3 of the number that they're saying. Why are they allowed to do this? I don't know. They just do, and that's just the way it is. And so what you're going to find is cameras with lower prices are going to have lower quality viewfinders, and cameras at higher prices are going to have better quality viewfinders. And there is kind of some set standards. And so there's about 5 different common standards that you're going to find with the viewfinders that you're going to find out here. Now, I think viewfinders are super important, but even though at my critical level, I have a hard time seeing and would inherently know without getting technical information where one camera sits. I'm moving 1 level here, not a big deal, but moving 2 levels, that gets to be a bigger deal. And the better you can see your image, the better you're going to know about composition and what you're getting in the frame. And it's just an important part about the photographic experience is when the photographer can see clearly what they are capturing in the viewfinder. And so take a look through a camera and see if you can notice the difference, because I think this is a very, very important difference. When it comes to the monitor on the back of the camera, a lot of the cameras now feature articulating screens. Sometimes they flip out and they can flip forward so that you can see yourself if you're shooting video. Sometimes they tilt in all sorts of different manner, and some are better for shooting video of yourself. Some are a little bit better for still photographers who typically shoot horizontal. Sometimes if you shoot vertical, sometimes certain styles of flip out screens are a little bit better in that regard. And so just be aware of how you might use the camera and whether the camera has a monitor that flips in any sort of way. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the class, most of these cameras shoot video, but the video features that you're going to get are going to vary quite a bit from model to model. There is a large range of video cameras, from very simplistic and small cameras, some action cameras, to full-on cinema cameras designed for shooting movies. And there's going to be a lot of different things that are important if you're going to be shooting video. First up is resolution. It's very common now for cameras to shoot 4K. Some shoot 6K, some shoot 8K. Higher resolution gives you more options, but it's also a lot more data to work with. All the cameras give you different frame rate options. There's a variety of reasons why you might need different frame rates, whether you're in different markets or shooting different styles. File formats are going to depend from one brand of camera to another brand. It also might matter what type of software you use as to what is going to be convenient and easy to work with. There's going to be different compression standards. Video takes up a lot of data, and so it's compressed in a number of different ways, and some standards are a little bit easier for some people to work with depending on the types of computers that they have. There's also different compression types that will be available in different types of cameras, so something else to keep in mind. Color sampling is a way of reducing the amount of data, and some cameras offer more options than others in that regard. All of these compression options result in different bit rates. And so the types of cards that are in the camera will also matter, because you're going to need to be storing all this data on those cards, and they need to be able to handle the bit rates that you are shooting in the cameras. There are different systems depending on which location you are around the world. There are different audio options, whether you want to manually control the audio, if you're going to be plugging in mics, a wide variety of options there. If you do want to plug in external devices, mics, monitors, headphones, there's different input devices on these cameras. Smaller cameras generally don't have as many options, and they're smaller micro versions, which may not work quite as well if you're going to be connecting up on a regular basis. Focusing is pretty good, but a lot of people who shoot video want to manually focus. And so then you need to go back and look at the lenses, those focusing rings, and how easy is it to manually focus if you're going to be doing that type of work. For quite a while in the photography world, we had a limit of 29 minutes, 59 seconds. There was a tax issue with products that did 30-minute record times. We don't seem to be having quite those same problems, but some cameras will only record for 30 minutes before you have to start again. And so if you have very long things that you are recording, maybe like an entire football game, then you might want to look at cameras that can handle an unlimited record time. Rolling shutter is how fast the cameras can record with their electronic sensor. And if you are moving the camera back and forth really quickly, it might take straight lines and make them look a little bent. It's got a bit of a jello effect, and that can be really important depending on how you are working with the camera. And so if you are into shooting video, these are some of the most important features that you're going to want to learn about and see what the different cameras offer that might meet your particular needs. There are many other features that you will also find in the camera. Let's talk about some of the most important ones here. First up is picture styles. This is the look of the image. It's not shutter speeds or apertures. It's the color, the contrast, the saturation. And each of the cameras has a number of profiles that you can set up for different types of photography. And sometimes they offer creative options, which are like heavy Photoshop filters or Instagram filters. And you can go in and you can choose a variety of these. And all of the camera manufacturers have it. And in every case that I can think of, you can go in and you can either customize one of the options that they have, or you can create one from scratch yourself. And so if you want more contrast, less saturation, you can really create a look that you like yourself. Now, this is only going to be important for people who are shooting JPEGs in the cameras. On all the cameras, you can also shoot in RAW, which is going to be the original information, where this doesn't matter and you'll be doing all your work on a computer in post-production. File format is another core setting that you will need to make on cameras. It's usually one of the first and most important ones, whether you want to shoot in JPEG or RAW. Many cameras also offer the option of HEIF images, which is like a new and improved JPEG image. You can also shoot RAW and JPEG at the same time if you want two files at the same time. RAW files are the original information from the sensor, where the camera is not messing around with your image in any way at all. And this is a great way of getting the best information at the time of recording, and you can work with it later on. Something to know is that all the manufacturers have their own style of RAW image, and you either need to use manufacturer's software in order to read those particular images, or you need some generic software like Adobe, Photoshop, Lightroom, things like that, and that will go in and that will read the different RAWs from all the different manufacturers. How you set this up and what the menu looks like, it's a little different on each of the different cameras, but they all have the same options. You can shoot in JPEGs of various different sizes and compression. You can shoot on RAWs, sometimes with a few different options, and you can shoot both at the same time if you want. All the cameras use memory cards. There are a few cameras that have built-in memory themselves, and you can also use memory cards to either double up or extend that memory, but for the most part, you're going to need a memory card in the camera. The most popular card is the secure digital card. It's fairly small, fairly lightweight, but it's a little bit flimsy. It's not the strongest piece of plastic in the world. A lot of the higher end cameras are now using a CF Express Type B card, and this is going to give you faster read and write time. So if a camera is really high resolution, it shoots through images a lot, or it shoots a lot of video, it's likely to use that CF Express B option. There are a few other cards that you might encounter on the market, but these are the most popular cards out there. And so I would kind of look at cameras that have these systems. They're very popular on the market. Stabilization is a couple of different options. One option is this can be in the lens. This is where there are lens elements that move around up, down, left, right that balance out the hand holding of the camera so that you can shoot pictures with slower shutter speeds in lower light conditions. Now, this started off in lenses, but it has spread and has become part of cameras as well. And many systems now offer lenses and cameras that both have stabilization, and it's good to have it in at least one of the two devices. If it's in both, they can frequently work together to achieve super stabilization, so it gets even better, not by much, but by a little bit. If you do a lot of handheld photography, I'm thinking like a travel photographer, this is really, really handy. It doesn't help you out if you're shooting sports because you still need a fast shutter speed for stopping the sports, and so it's less necessary in that particular field. All cameras also have button customization, and this is where you get to choose the functions of the various different buttons on the camera. Now, typically the higher end cameras have more buttons and more customizing options. And so this is really good. Once you learn how a camera works and what it's capable of, you can really customize it the way you like it to work. If you don't like where a particular focus button is, you can move it to someplace else where it's easier for you to reach. And so it's really nice getting a camera customized. This is one of those things I go through in my camera courses, is how to customize the camera and some of those little secrets that are all buried into the cameras in that particular regard. One of the most important features on a camera is the lenses that are available for it. Now, I could go on all day about lenses, but we're going to try to keep it short and sweet here. When you are looking for lenses, the focal length and the maximum aperture are the numbers that are going to tell you really everything about what that lens is doing and what it's all about. And so photographers generally want to have a range of lenses for doing a variety of things. Now, different manufacturers have different ways of labeling their lenses, but you will find a lot of the most important information about lenses listed right on them. You'll be able to see what sort of buttons, switches, and dials are available on it, sometimes what the minimum focusing distance is, whether you can manually focus or autofocus on it. And so there's a lot of great information just by looking at the available lenses. As I said, photographers need a variety of focal lengths to work in many different situations. It's nice to have a range of tools in your toolbox. I think most photographers are going to probably want something between 24 millimeters and 200. Now, sometimes you can get that in a single lens. Sometimes you want to get that in 2 or 3 lenses or individual lenses. We can go wider than that. We can go more telephoto than that. Now, these focal lengths are in relationship to a full frame sensor. If you are using a crop frame sensor, you will have a different range of lenses. And so 24 to 200 in full frame is the same angle of view as 16 to 135 millimeters with a 1.5 crop sensor. And so depending on what type of photography you do, well, that's going to vary as to what type of lenses that you need. Landscape photographers predominantly need wide-angle lenses, but telephoto lenses can be very valuable. Portrait photographers need short telephotos for the most part. Sports wildlife photographers need really long telephotos. And for just general photography, well, you're going to want a little bit in the wide-angle world, and you're going to want a little bit in the telephoto world. And that will generally cover a wide range of uses. Now, as I mentioned before, the manufacturers make a variety of different cameras with different lens mounts on them so that you can use different lenses. Now, Canon and Nikon have been around for a while, so they have 4 different lens mounts. They have 2 full frame systems and 2 crop frame systems. Now, their DSLR systems, well, they're getting older and they're not bringing out new cameras and lenses. And so those DSLR systems are getting a little bit older, as I say, and it's not something I would recommend people getting brand new into photography usually get into. There are some exceptional reasons, though. Sony has a full frame system, a crop frame system, and you're going to find this is true of most manufacturers. Panasonic has a full frame system, but their smaller one is a micro 4/3 system. Fuji works with a different system there. They go with medium format and the crop frame aps-c system. Olympus OM system, as it is now known, focuses exclusively on the micro 4/3 system, so all of their energy is focused in one area. And you can really see that in the lenses and the cameras they bring out. They do a very good job of that. Leica has 2 systems. They're both full frame in this case, but very different styles of camera. Pentax is still hanging around, and they have a full frame and a crop frame system as well. And so choosing the right system to get into is very important. As I mentioned towards the beginning of this guide, choosing the right lens mount is really important because that's going to steer you to what is available in lenses. So if you bought a particular manufacturer's camera, there's going to be a whole bunch of available lenses from that manufacturer for it. But if you want to look a little bit wider, there are other manufacturers. Sigma is probably one of the most prolific manufacturers. They make a lot of different lenses for a lot of different brands and a lot of different mounts. Tamron is another excellent manufacturer that makes some really, really good products. Tokina is another one of the most popular ones that has a lot of available options out there. And so you don't have to stick with the manufacturer's lenses. A lot of times I personally like to try to stick with the manufacturer because I know everything works and it's warranted to work. And sometimes with the other manufacturers, there might be an incompatibility issue. They make very good glass, but sometimes the electronics don't always match up. And so there are many good options out there with Sigma, Tamron, Tokina, and further. Just be aware of kind of the market of what you're getting into. Now, beyond the big 3 aftermarket lens manufacturers, there are many, many other brands. And this starts providing some interesting options for photographers who want something that's a little different. A lot of times manufacturers who make cameras, they make very safe choices in lenses. And if you want to do something different and interesting, well, maybe there's some other company that is willing to do it, put it on a mount and make it available for your particular camera. And so there's some interesting options out there, but just be aware of some compatibility issues. And so you might want to take a look at the ratings and reviews for those particular lenses as to how they work on your brand and your model of camera. All right, if you are interested in photography classes and knowing more about photography, I have a number of different classes available dealing with general photography, exposure, focus, or specific topics like landscape or travel photography. If you want to know more about lenses, I have really in-depth guides for some of the most popular lens mounts out there, going through all the different lens technology and lens recommendations. And so check those out if you really want to know more about your camera, your photography, and your lenses. And so that brings to a close this camera fundamental section. So as I say, designed for people who are going to be looking for new cameras. I think now you are armed with the information to know what to look for and what sort of good questions that you can be asking of somebody that's going to be helping you buy the right camera at perhaps hopefully your favorite camera store, which is the best place to go so that you can see these cameras in person, put them in your hands, look at the viewfinder. How good is the EVF? How does it feel in your hands? How does it focus? Really being able to get to see that yourself is very, very important because the camera is a very tactile, personal thing, and you want to be very, very comfortable with what you choose in there. All right, so in the next section, I'll be going into my recommendations, and I hope to see you there.